Hello everyone and welcome back to another video with On Point Politics, and today we're going to be looking at the electoral college map between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris for the 2024 matchup. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy content just like this. And so, looking at the national aggregate, we see Donald Trump is ahead by 3.5 points, give or take, as of right now. This is a huge difference from when Biden was leading by 8.7% back on July 23rd of 2020. Almost an 11-point difference in the polling data. And so that is very, very telling there. And Harris is now above the 40% mark. We saw new polls basically have from Marist. She is basically tied in a third-party matchup now. And what's happening is you're seeing an oversampling of Democrat voters, either due to large enthusiasm or possible poll manipulation by the mainstream media. The most accurate way to track approval ratings happens to be this through civics, and this is actually a pretty accurate way to track how elections go. Popular vote, shares tend to correlate to candidates' approval rating, and so looking at Harris, she is at a 36% favorable. If we go to Donald Trump's favorable rating, we are actually going to see that the former president is currently sitting at a 42% approval rating, leaving a 6-point difference in their favorables. And so if you were to apply third parties to that difference, that gives you around an 8 to 9 point victory. And my election model currently has Donald Trump winning the popular vote by 9.5 points. Harris would have to do very, very well in the polling aggregates and catch up in favorability against Trump in order for this to even be remotely competitive. So she has a lot of work to do if she wants to remain competitive with the former president. So now for the safe Republican states, we have the safe red state of Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, Montana, the Dakotas, all of Nebraska except that 2nd congressional district. We have Kansas, Oklahoma, Alaska, as well as the state of Texas, joining the safe Republican column at 21 points for Donald Trump. Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, West Virginia are also in that safe column, including the state of Ohio coming in at 22 points for Donald Trump, and the state of Iowa at 22 points for Donald Trump, and the state of Florida at 20 points for Donald Trump, but South Carolina and Maine's 2nd congressional district joining the safe Republican column. We see Donald Trump is at 219 safe electoral college votes. In the states of Texas and Florida, Donald Trump has double-digit leads in these states. The latest polls indicate that he is ahead by double digits against Harris, and polling tends to underestimate Republicans here. And clearly with the demographic trends and the difference in approval ratings, the model is picking up a pretty big landslide victory for Donald Trump in Texas and Florida. And with Kamala Harris's lack of Rust Belt appeal, she's going to struggle in the Rust Belt pretty heavily. And once we get updated disapproval data, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Rust Belt vote to the right of Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada this cycle. If we look at the safe Democrat states, we have no other than the states of Maryland, Massachusetts, Vermont, and DC to go in the safe Democrat column as of right now for Vice President Harris. Something to note, yes, you do see this. State of California is not in the safe Democrat column. We have seen in a latest poll as of last year, Kamala Harris was only leading Trump by 9 points in an Emerson College poll. And while in 2010 the Democrat governor candidate won by 13 points, she basically only won her attorney general's race by less than a point and was only able to survive that election because of third-party candidates actually taking away votes from the conservative Republican candidate. And that goes to show how weak she is electorally. And so for the likely Democrat states, we have the state of California at 12 points for Kamala Harris, state of Hawaii at 7 points for Kamala Harris. We also have the states of Connecticut at just 9 points for Harris. We have the state of Delaware at just 7 points for Harris. That could even get closer depending on the new demographics. Trump improving with white working class voters and white voters in general is going to give him a really big boost in the state of Delaware and could potentially make it competitive. In Rhode Island, that state's going to be around a 10-point win for Harris. In the state of New York, an 8-point victory seems to be likely for Harris. In our latest poll for the state of New York done by SoCal Research, we have Harris up 11 points in a head-to-head matchup. So with third parties, an 8-point victory would be within reasonable range, and Joe Biden was already polling around this range before he dropped out of the race. We also see in the state of Washington, a 7-point victory is on the way for that state as well for Vice President Harris, with Maine's first being a likely district for the Democrats. And we see that Donald Trump is still standing strong at 219 safe electoral votes to Kamala Harris's likely and safe states. Believe it or not, all the states that are filled in the likely column all voted for Joe Biden by 15 points in the previous election, showing Kamala's weakness as a replacement candidate going against Donald Trump. We see the state of Wisconsin being an 11-point victory for the former president, state of Pennsylvania being a 12-point victory, and Michigan being a 10.5-point win for the former president. Kamala Harris has no white working class appeal and will really struggle in the Rust Belt area. I actually suspect as we get more demographic data, the model will have the Rust Belt voting to the right of the Sun Belt by a pretty decent amount. I'm not going to deny Kamala Harris is going to appeal to a subsection of the African American electorate, but my political analysis and instinct tells me that she's going to underperform with African American males, especially younger African American males, and will more than likely underperform with young African American women, and will more than likely only do better with millennial and boomer black voters in this cycle. And more than likely, she will hemorrhage support more from the younger African American base than the older base, which will allow her to basically perform worse than Joe Biden with black voters in states in the Rust Belt, but will probably still hold strong in the Atlanta suburbs as well as in the Maricopa area of Arizona. Nevada, I'm actually going to fill in the likely column as almost a 15-point victory for Donald Trump. It is very close, but again, a lot of white working class voters in the east side of the state. These city areas are expected to already trend to Donald Trump, but I feel like with Harris, she's going to do even worse here because of the fact she performs worse with Hispanic voters on average in the latest polling data compared to former president, or not former president, but incumbent President Joe Biden. And so that's going to be a really big problem for her going to this election. Nevada is basically pretty much dead on arrival for her in 2024. The states of Georgia are a 12.5-point victory for Donald Trump. Arizona coming in at 12 points for the former president. However, in later models, I expect these states to get a lot closer. North Carolina, also like Gold Crown Politics, is now in the safe Republican column. This state has really been sort of stagnant in its trend, trending slightly to the left, but with African American voters defecting from the Democrat Party this cycle, as well as the state becoming more of a MAGA Republican state, and with the rules really trending to the right, I am going to expect Donald Trump to win the state of North Carolina very easily. He also won these states twice back in the last cycle and in 2016, and I expect Donald Trump to improve with suburban white voters now that Kamala Harris is the Democrat nominee. Now, for the lean Democrat states, we have those of Oregon coming in at just 4.9 percentage points for Joe Biden. These states particularly have more of a white population, and in the new demographics, Donald Trump seems to be improving with white voters compared to what he would have done with Joe Biden. And so these states are going to be shifting more to the right compared to what they would have before. Looking at another lean Democrat state, the state of Colorado is going to be a 4.3 percentage point victory for Harris. In this cycle, this state's been trending to the left for a very long time now, and I'm not surprised that we are seeing this right now for the state. Joe Biden was polling very well here even, before the dropout of his presidential bid. And so I believe Kamala Harris will more than likely still hold on to the state of Colorado until we get new demographic models and new polling. We are stuck with the lean blue categorization. For the state of Illinois, Kamala Harris, is only going to be winning the state by 1.7 percentage points, with Donald Trump getting in proper city Chicago last cycle, and with the fact that Kamala Harris is not going to have a lot of white working class support with the Midwest, I'm not going to be surprised at all now to see the state of Illinois vote to the right of Colorado. My model had this already for Joe Biden. I was a little bit suspicious of this, but now that Kamala Harris is the nominee, I am definitely expecting Illinois to vote to the right of Colorado by possibly 2 to 3 points, which could put the state of Illinois in play if Donald Trump wins the popular vote by over 10 percentage points. And we've seen polls very recently, like the Harvard Harris X poll, have Donald Trump up in the popular vote by 11 points with likely voters. So that is definitely going to be something interesting. Looking at the state of New Jersey, we have a lean categorization for Kamala Harris. She was losing this in the last scenario, but now that she's gained a bit in the polling data, she is now winning it in our forecast by 1.3%. I believe she's going to underperform in the state of New Jersey. I don't think she's going to be a good candidate for the state. There's a large amount of demographics here, a lot of white, Hispanic, and African American voters here. And with the fact she's going to perform worse with white and Hispanic voters, I think the state could narrow up more than what people are thinking. Now, looking at the Republican states, the state of New Mexico is a 4.5-point victory for Donald Trump. This state voted for Joe Biden by about 10.8 percentage points in the previous cycle. And with Harris doing worse with Hispanic and white voters at large, this is the majority of the electorate in the state. And I wouldn't be surprised to see the state trend a point or two Republican, unlike last year's where the trend has been pretty stagnant. And especially there is a lot of white working class voters in the state outside of the city of Albuquerque, and I think those voters may shift to the right with Donald Trump going against Kamala Harris. So I am now more confident in the New Mexico categorization for Donald Trump to win the state by 4.5 points. Looking at the state of Virginia, that is going to be a 3-point victory for Donald Trump. In the latest poll that we conducted in the state of Virginia about 2 weeks ago, Kamala Harris was running behind Joe Biden by 3 points and is actually tied in the state with Donald Trump, not even factoring in third-party sentiment. And so because of that, I expect this to be a very possible scenario where Donald Trump can win the state by about 3 points. The reason why I'm saying this is because Donald Trump was just leading a poll against Joe Biden with third parties by 5 percentage points. This is a state that he lost by 10 last time, and the fact he's even leading a poll there by 5 is a pretty crazy testament to how much the state is becoming a competitive battleground for 2024. There's a reason why they're sending J.D. Vance to do rallies here. It's because he can appeal to the western north side of the electorate in the state of Virginia, where a lot of rural voters bordering the borders of Kentucky and West Virginia are. And he may be able to appeal to these voters and possibly snatch that rural vote in the west side of the state of Virginia. Now coming up to the northeast here and the upper Midwest, we have the state of Minnesota. Now, my model has it as a 2-point victory, but I actually would probably put it in the tilt category. I believe she's probably going to do better in the Twin City areas, but I also think that she's going to underperform in the rural areas in the state and more than likely do really, really bad here. Maybe she wins it by a point. Maybe it's tilt. I could actually see a possibility of her even winning the state very narrowly by a point or two. That's how far left she is. However, as of right now, I am going to leave it about a 1 or 2 point victory, since that's what my model is showing. Further changes will be discussed. Looking at Nebraska's 2nd congressional district, we have about an 8-point victory here. This district was redrawn to be more conservative, and with Kamala Harris being the nominee, I'm actually more confident that that's going to be the margin now, especially since she's not going to appeal to suburban white voters the same way that Joe Biden did. Also, something that's not mentioned, Joe Biden was able to get a lot of Catholic voter support because he is actually the only Catholic president besides John F. Kennedy. And so that is definitely going to hurt Harris, that she does not have that strong Catholic coalition that arguably helped him out in suburban communities and helped him out in places like Georgia, like Wisconsin, like Arizona to narrowly win the last election. But without that strong Catholic coalition, she may falter in some suburban areas. Looking at Maine at large, Donald Trump is currently picking off the state by about 0.8 percentage points. I'd actually be more confident about Trump's chances in Maine at large. Kamala Harris is comparable to Hillary Clinton in 2016, and she massively underperformed against, Donald Trump in the state. But as of right now, we are going to leave it in that tilt column. And New Hampshire, being the closest state on this map, would be a 0.4 percentage point victory for Donald Trump. There's a lot of Boston, Massachusetts liberals moving to the state, but I believe that as of right now, he'd more than likely be able to pick it off. As a latest poll from the state actually has Donald Trump winning it by 1 against Kamala Harris. So that is very interesting to see that there. And it was a university poll from the state of New Hampshire. And so that is it for this video. Donald Trump is at 347 electoral college votes to Kamala Harris's 191 electoral college votes. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you want more content just like this, and if you enjoyed the electoral analysis that I provided. Make sure to tune into today's live stream that I'm going to be streaming at about 8 p.m. Eastern time for the first episode of the On Point podcast. I will hope to see you guys there, and I will see you guys in the next video.